that if we can rearrange government and include these people, then we'll have a fresh start. That is a lie. These people are taking us round and round. 60 years since independence, we still have the same problems, ignorance, poverty, and disease. And now we have the issue of corruption and runaway debt, which these people took us into. Kibaki left us at a very good point. 10 years of Uhuru and Ruto have taken us down the drain. And now Ruto comes with these runaway taxes, imagining that through taxation, over taxation actually, and high energy costs and high costs of living, that he will fix this country. No, it will not happen. It will not happen. And Kenyans had better wake up and realize you can only be tricked this many times. We can only be deceived these many times. If we don't wake up and take sovereign power according to Article 1 of our Constitution and throw out our oppressors and throw them out completely so that we form a fresh Kenya, a new Kenya that is inclusive, that is people-centered.
All right, Kidi, let me bring you in this conversation. And you've heard Reuben Kigame say that Raila is also part of the mismanagement of the country. Do you agree with the sentiments?
Ken, I don't think that it would be proper for convener of the Inter-Parties Youth Forum to come on an elegant show as this one to start pointing fingers. One thing we must appreciate is that the political class have let us down. Every time they have had a chance to make hard choices, they have constantly settled on easier ones. For instance, when we had a chance, handshake provided a perfect opportunity to reset this country. Particularly, remember that the first 5 years after of the Jubilee administration was a difficult environment. Difficult because the political environment had been poisoned by the ghosts of ICC process. So when we had a handshake, by the time we were going to into the handshake, largely most of those ICC cases had been dropped. So handshake should have given us an opportunity to reset the tone of the Second Republic. But then what did we do? We started what was called what we call the war on corruption. But in hindsight, we could see that it was an opportunity to settle political scores. So what we thought was a war on corruption became an opportunity to settle political scores that had, exacerbated in the previous 5 years. When in 2022, we had the presidential elections and the IBC made its pronouncements, and then the law provides that when there is dispute in regards to presidential elections, you go to the Supreme Court. Actually, it is not, again, for nothing that the people of Kenya decided to give the Supreme Court just one original jurisdiction, and that is to settle disputes arising out of presidential elections. And the Supreme Court, again, pronounced itself. What did the political class do? They decided to rubbish both the IEBC, which is fine, and then the Supreme Court. When you rubbish the Supreme Court's position, then it means that you exacerbate anxiety within the country. Why do I call it exacerbating anxiety? The constitutional democracy only thrives when institutions are given a chance to function. When you undermine credibility of institutions, then you begin to undermine constitutional democracy, the democracy as a form of government. And in the last 10 years, say 10, 15 years, constitutional law scholars have been speaking about something called autocratic legalism. Autocratic legalism is when charismatic politicians ascend to power on account of their charisma. When in office, then they begin to dismantle the constitutional safeguards. But there is a trend that is emerging in Kenya where charismatic politicians, but who are unable to get into office, use their political popularity to begin to undermine constitutional institutions that would make us a republic. It is something that I think we need to confront as soon as we can, because when politicians are unable or unwilling to have respect for institutions, then we begin to chip away what we call the Republic of Kenya. So I think that the political class have let the people of Kenya down, and it is something that people of Kenya must now be able to turn their eyes to.
All right.
Very seriously, yes.
Ruben Kigame, before this bipartisan talks, we Kenyans were on the streets every week, and we had the bipartisan talks which failed, and then later on we now have the national dialogue. And you've actually said that these talks are a waste of time. I mean, what are we going to do next if at all these talks fail?
We are not short of the right things to do. Like my colleague is saying, we have institutions, we also have laws. The problem is that a few people believe they are above the law, and so they live lawlessly. So much so that when you look at our constitution, for example, it says that for anyone to occupy office, then they need to fulfill chapter 6. They have to be people of integrity, people who can hold office because of their character. Now, so what happens is that in forming the current government, for example, the institution of IEBC had flagged over 200 people who should not hold office. Guess what? Most of them are in office today. Now, if you also go back to why Kenyans were going to the streets, it was basically because the government, had brought the cost of living to a place where Kenyans could not make ends meet. So food prices were going up, the fuel cost was going up, energy costs were going up, and now the taxes. And the Kenyans, put their voices forward. They said they did not want punitive taxation. Now, this is a government that would look at majority submissions like those that were taken to parliament and just rubbish them. And so keep increasing taxes and keep, subjecting Kenya to foreign intrusion to the point where we are exploited. But most of all, we know for sure that the Treasury and the financial institutions of this country have flagged the debt problem. And instead of dealing with it, we keep borrowing. So in other words, the institutions are there, the laws are there, but what runs Kenya is impunity. That's why I was talking about the culture of Madharau, that this is the law, but we will, flout it. That this is the right thing, but we will not do it. That Kenyans are suffering, but we are not listening. That the cost of living is high, but who cares? So that kind of impunity, that kind of Madharau is what I'm saying should not be allowed to go on. Kenyans should come forth and raise leaders of character, leaders who have values, who can keep, their word instead of promise after promise after promise, and that don't care attitude, which must be brought to an end.
Kigame, talking of the high cost of living, the Azimio leader Raila Odinga today, while in the coastal region, said that he's not going to sign any agreement with the Kenya Kwanza government if in the ongoing Bomas talks, if the high cost of living in the country is not addressed. And today we saw the Energy CS Davis Chirchir saying that the price of super petrol is likely to increase to 300 shillings in the upcoming April fuel price review. I mean, with all this, do you think the high cost of living is actually going to be addressed in this bipartisan talks?
Ken, it is not a priority. Take my word, if we are dealing with Kenya Kwanza and Azimio, the cost of living is not a priority, and they use it for political mileage. That's why it was put on the back burner. Kalonzo Musyoka came up the last week and said, now we are going to call in experts to tell us about how to improve the cost of, to make the cost of living better. That means that everything else was important, but the cost of living was not. Now, if you remember why Azimio was going to the streets, The primary reason was not really the cost of living. It was a disputed election. They wanted Raila to be president. In other words, the cost of living was being used as a bait, as an opportunistic, point in order to make Kenyans feel like they're fighting for them. If at all, if you looked at a disputed election and you looked at the suffering of Kenyans, if I were them, I would talk about nothing else except how to improve the lives of Kenyans. Why? Once Kenyans' lives have improved, now we can talk about all these other things.
All right. Kidi, do you think the issue of the high cost of living is actually an opportunistic point by the Azimio la Umoja coalition?
Ken, you see, whenever you have crisis, you begin with the most urgent ones. We were here in 2008 when the panel of African eminent personalities were presiding over the Bomas talks. No, not Bomas, I mean Serena talks. And remember when Kofi Annan jetted into the country, the first business on the order paper was cessation of hostilities. And until that was done, then we got into now discussing other agendas, which included now power sharing. How do we share power? Then the power sharing was supposed to provide the framework of the implementation of Agenda 4. When we went to Bomas, and then our first business on the order paper was the position of the leader of official opposition and the position of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. It tells you where our priorities are. And then on the last week again, as Ndugu Kigame rightly puts it, is that we say that now let experts come to tell us how to reduce the high cost of living. I think if it is not the height of political dishonesty, then I do not have name for it. So I think that should have been the first agenda on the order paper. They should have told us of the practical measures they're coming up with to ensure that the cost of living is manageable. Part of what is contributing to this high cost of living is the legacy of debt. That in the last 10 years, we borrowed so recklessly, and over and above borrowing so recklessly, we are unable to point out that what exactly did we do with that money. Of course, there is the SGR. SGR was oversold to us. To date, you know that SGR cannot generate revenue to repay for itself. So it remains a white elephant. Look at the expressway. Those were our priorities. The question is, how do we put so much money in an infrastructure like the expressway, while so many people, particularly if you look at the World Bank report in 2020, 2021, it was indicating that after the COVID-19, about 2.4 million Kenyans had sunk into poverty because of the job losses and the businesses closing up on account of COVID-19. So what we should have seen, and again, last year, the figures were out there that up to 6 million Kenyans were unable to have access to food and water on account of the extended drought. So if we had a leadership that is concerned with the welfare of the people of Kenya, which is essentially why we formed the social contract, we should have seen the cost of living being a priority.
Kidi, you've
yes.
said that the political class has actually failed Kenyans.
Exactly.
Kenyans have 4 years until the next election.
Yes.
I mean, what should Kenyans do in this period?
In the here and now, you realize that the Constitution provides on how the government would be formed. And the government is formed through elections. So now that we have an election, I mean, we have a government that is legitimately in office, what Kenyans would do, to answer your question, in the next 4 years, is one that Kenyans must form an alliance that is a pragmatic alliance that puts aside differences of ethnicity, differences of faith, differences of, based on other straitjackets, and make sure that we come together as a people of Kenya. That coming together should help us keep the government in check, because one of the things that may come out of the Bomas talks is a rapprochement between the two sides of the political divide. And we have seen before that whenever the two sides of the sides of the political divide can come together, they would easily throw the people of Kenya under the bus and take care of their own interests. So the people of Kenya may have to come together in the spirit of the nation of Kenya, and to make sure that they constantly keep the government on check so that the government delivers. An active citizenry is a requisite in a constitutional democracy. Thank you.
All right. Ruben, let me pose the same question to you. Now, you say that Kenya needs a new crop of leadership. Now that you have 4 years until the next elections, what should Kenyans do to be able to solve these issues that they are facing?
So first of all, I think Kenyans must learn that when they allow politicians to buy them using money, this is what they get in return. Madharau. Tuliwanunua, we can do anything we want with you. So my first wake-up call, my first plea to every Kenyan listening to me tonight is, let us run away from the politics of handouts, the politics of 200 bob, 1,000 bob in order to vote in somebody. That is why they go back in and try to recover all of that money. Secondly, now that we have a government in place, we must keep that government in check. We really must speak to government when they go astray and speak truth to power, because sovereign power, according to the Constitution, belongs to the people of Kenya, and we deserve better. We deserve better. This is a good country, but it is messed up by a few people. So we need to keep this government in check. Thirdly, we need to stop imagining that it is the presidency that can solve the political challenges of this country. You can have a good president, but if you have terrible MCAs and MPs and women reps and senators and governors, the rot that we see at the top will be devolved to the counties, to your villages, etc. So we need to start identifying people of character to occupy every possible office in this country, and to deliberately lock out those people that have been looting us, that have been lying to us, the people that have been stealing from us and putting us in debt. We must exclude them completely from leadership. And I'm saying even Ruben does not have to be president. I mean, I would like to be, but I may never be let by most of you. But even if you don't let me become your president, don't put in thieves. Don't put in liars that will tell you we will do something and they don't. Don't put in people that have been mentioned adversely. And, when they get into office, all those cases are just swept aside. In developed countries or other countries, when somebody is caught up in a crime, they resign. In this country, mtu anawaongelesha na madharau, mtu anafanya vituko, they are just moved from one ministry to another. So we must wake up and put into office people of character, watu wa maadili. We need people who can say, follow me. This is a Christian station, so I can say, follow me as I follow Christ. If we're not willing to follow Christ and we're not even willing to follow the Constitution, we are the wrong people to be in government. Well, and the only thing I stand for right now is I cry out for Kenyans to wake up and vote in a government of manners, a government of values that puts people first. Short of that, you will be in this wilderness for a very long time.
Well, Ruben, the president just the other day said that you need to give him time to work on all this issue, more so on the high cost of living. Do you think that, the honeymoon time is over for the president and his deputy and the government?
You know, sometimes we joke and say, give time, time. That is not a good thing to, put in front of the faces of hungry Kenyans. You know, we were told to give them 3 months. We did. Give us 6 months. We did. Give us 1 year. We did. Now, if someone has lied to you once, twice, thrice, if they tell you give me a 4th chance and they've lied to you 3 times, you don't trust them. We have a trust deficit. We have a problem of trust in this country because we are led by liars who promise the heavens, who promise change, and then you go, give me time, give me time, give me time. If you knew that, you needed 3 years, just say you need 3 years. Don't say 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. And then if you say, I'm going to do this, by God's sake, do it. Because as the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 5, it's better not to promise than to promise and then you don't fulfill. You can't say I was joking. You can't say it was, I didn't mean it. You said it, you promised. And then you come to swear. You carry a Bible. You carry a constitution and say you'll uphold it. Then you just, the things that are happening in this country, I cringe, actually. I tremble because every single day is an act of grace and we just keep mistreating Kenyans, imagining God in heaven is laughing. No. If we don't get, the justice in this life, some people will pay heavily in heaven for playing with the lives of people, sending some people to the grave. There are people who have worked for this government and they were promised to be paid. They've never been paid. There are people who died during COVID that should never have died because we took away the medicines and built houses with them and, bought things outside the country. And we continue to loot the economy, imagining that God in heaven, will just pat us on the back. I tell you, a time of reckoning is coming. But as Kenyans, we must wake up and not go into insanity, doing the same things the same way and then imagining different results.
All right. Let's shift gears now. The head of state is expected to give a State of the Nation address on Thursday at the main parliament buildings here in Nairobi. I mean, what do you think the head of state, President William Ruto, is going to tell Kenyans on the State of the Nation address?
Ken, one thing we must appreciate from the outset is that on 9th of August, people of Kenya went to the ballot and they made a decision. And for position of the commander-in-chief, they put in place William Samoei Ruto. To this extent, I must say that I believe that we have a capable commander-in-chief. And part of the problems that we are grappling with at the moment might not be entirely of the making of the Kenya Kwanza administration. But where the Kenya Kwanza administration has failed is that it has continued, or it appeared that it has continued to engage in wasteful spending at the expense of the people of Kenya. So we legitimately expected, as the people of Kenya, that the president would quickly get into office, put in place austerity measures, do a comprehensive financial consolidation, and see how to seal the corruption loopholes. The previous Auditor General told us that we have got what is called budgeted corruption. Those are things because we have an energetic, young, educated, and an alert president. We expected him to embark on those measures. Earlier in the year, we saw what looked like, a war on corruption. But then it quickly fizzled out when he disbanded the board of KEMSA. We expect that the president will engage in a sustained, credible war on corruption to make sure that anyone who steals money from the people of Kenya is made to pay back. And then it must also, use a few people as an example. to ensure that anyone who attempts to steal under his watch, when the people of Kenya are suffering this much, is discouraged, just by the firmness with which he would be able to deal with other people.
All right.
Of course, the president came into office when a lot of people were saying that, Kenya Kwanza government is a poster child of corruption. I think the president must disapprove such people because he's the commander-in-chief. As a commander-in-chief in a presidential system, he is the finest expression of our sovereignty. So back to your question, what is the president going to tell us? I hope that he addresses us in those lines that I've mentioned. Thank
All
you.
right. Kigame, you say that Kenyans are being overtaxed. When the president is going to issue the State of the Nation address, do you think he's going to actually tell Kenyans how the taxes have been used in the past 1 year?
Ken, I don't know what the president is going to be saying on Thursday. And to be honest with you, that's not my prerogative. That's up to him to say what he wants to say.
All right.
I just hope that he will not make any more false promises. I also hope that he will not make any decisions that will make more Kenyans hungry. I also hope that he will not make his address and then next week we see an increase in fuel prices. I really hope that he will not, continue to put people in office that should actually be out of office. But I know what I would have said if I was the one making this particular address on Thursday. The first thing I would do is ensure and work with my team so that in that address, we have worked out a mechanism to bring down VAT from 16% to 14%, so that we are able to spur investment and collection of taxes, actually. I would have brought back the fuel subsidies and ensured that, that extra 8% is scrapped. I would certainly ensure that I empower EACC and the prosecutor to be able to bring to book the people that have looted our economy. In this address, I would actually have shamed some and ordered their arrest, especially those who have borrowed in our name and then, lied that they were doing certain projects. And then we realized that there were no projects being done. Eurobond, these KEMSA, the NYS funds that have been looted, all these, we need to bring people to book. I would be jailing some shortly after that address. Another thing I would have done is ensure that I announce from next year, there would be free education from primary to secondary to undergraduate. And that with less than 400 billion. I have done the computation, and with just above 380 billion, you can provide free education for primary, secondary, and undergrad. Why we are spending 621 billion without free education, I have no idea. I have no idea. Why parents would be paying for education with all that money, I have no idea. I know for sure that if I was making the address, I would be talking about how our Kenyans in the diaspora would be given a chance to invest in this country as we zero rate their investment spending. That I would be ensuring that I do not open up the borders of Kenya unless the reciprocal countries are also opening up their borders. You can't just blanketly clear visas for people, and for some countries, if you go, you are treated like an animal because their countries are treated like paradise. So I would emphasize on the sovereignty of this country. I would not allow anything from out there to come and take advantage of the people of Kenya if I am the president of Kenya. So help me God.
All right, Kigame, what do you make of the Kenya Kwanza government in the past 1 year that they have been in office?
Let my friend comment because I don't have very good what's about to come.
All right, Kidi, what do you make of the Kenya Kwanza government in the past 1 year?
Thank you very much, man of God, Ndugu Kigambe. You are clearly a man of God. You see how the man of God has rescued me from marginalization. Ken, the government came in and it had what you would call, the star projects. One of them was fertilizer subsidy, which we were told was supposed to help subsidize production. The second one was Hustler Fund, which was supposed to give a hand up to the people at the base of the economic pyramid, to be able to have, a promise at a shot at dignity. But then you see what has happened is that fertilizer subsidy, as much as we registered higher harvests, a bumper harvest, already now we are having rain that is pounding all over the country. I am not sure if we also invested in proper post-harvest practices. Further and significantly is that the higher taxes have also undermined everything the government attempted to achieve through Hustler Fund, because one, purchasing power has gone as evaporated. Secondly is that businesses, particularly the SMEs that were subsisting, have also gone belly up because the cost of operation has become unsustainable. The only and the surest safety net we have in this country as part of social protection is the family. Today, on account of the taxes, what you call Kenya's middle class, are unable to extend a helping hand to a relative who is going to hospital, who is having fees problem, who is having difficulties. Like, we are an African society, and one thing about African society is that we have a fairly more stable social compact. That social compact is currently very threatened on account of the high cost of living. So I think that because I believe in giving people benefit of the doubt, all the good intentions that the government had have already been undermined. I don't know if it is by the circumstances they find themselves in, or is it through the mistakes of their own making.
Thank you. How can you describe the state of the nation as per now?
Of course, it is not very hopeful. It is not hopeful because I work with young people. A lot of young people, increasingly more young people are out of work than at any other time. Because even, the state sector jobs are only about 2-3 million jobs. So the only thing the government does is to provide an enabling environment for private enterprise to thrive. Because of the higher taxes, my brother, private enterprise is either fleeing from this country or it is just folding up and people are hoping that some miracle will happen.
All right.
So that is the state of the nation.
Is there any hope? Now that this is a Christian station, it's known as Hope TV, we need to also give hope to our viewers. I know we've talked a lot of negative that is happening in the country, but is there any hope for the future?
If I was a proper politician, I would have quoted Barack Obama by saying that while we breathe with hope, and where we are met with the cynicism and doubt, we will respond with the timeless creed that defines the spirit of a people, that yes, we can. But being a Christian, I will go back to the scripture by telling the people of Kenya that be ye still and know that I am God. For the Egyptians you are seeing today, you shall see them no more.
All right.
That the taxes, all the problems that the people of Kenya are feeling, if they trust in God, those problems shall pass and we shall have a better country. Thank you.
All right. Ruben, as you conclude, how can you describe the state of the nation? Is there any hope?
I really don't know what to tell you. If you watched my face, I just lit up when my brother started sharing the scripture reference there. And, the word of God has power. When he talks about the children of Israel at the Red Sea, and there's no hope, and God tells Moses, be still and see the salvation of the Lord. I like that. But for me, yes, there is hope for 3 reasons. One, because people change, but God does not change. So we can rely on him. He has taken us through different situations before. He will take us through the years ahead. Secondly, we are here and we are ready to offer a solution. We are ready to offer a brand new start, a reboot of the country. Just give us a chance. Msituweke kando, support us and put us in inbox and see where you can help so that we can actually change everything once and for all. And lastly, from the scriptures, I read in Job chapter 14, in verse 7. I actually wrote a song, lipo tumaini kwa mti ulokatwa, maana ukikatwa utachipuka tena. Kenya itachipuka, na naamini kwamba Mungu ana mipango mizuri kwa nchi ya Kenya.
All right, I guess that's a nice point to end our conversation tonight on the Dialogue KE. Thank you so much, Reuben Kigame, for your time.
Thank you for
All right,
having me.
and thank you so much, Kidi, for coming through to the show. Kidi is the convener of Interparties Youth Forum, and of course, Reuben Kigame is the former presidential aspirant. And many thanks to you for watching the Dialogue KE tonight, and many thanks also to the stellar crew that made this broadcast a success. On behalf of the whole team, have yourself a good night. My name is Kennedy Kimani, and my co-presenter on the Sun Language Interpretation has been Boniface Murithi.